Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 3 of the Educational Grippers series, and today we're going to be talking about how to balance arm wrestling training and grip training. I know that this is an area that a lot of people kind of cross over to both sports, and that leaves a lot of people empty-handed as to how exactly to get the most out of each sport that they're training for. So I guess we should start off by saying those of you who have tried to close a gripper after arm wrestling practice, it's almost impossible. Your forearm's blown up, it's not optimal. But what is good is there is a way to train it without stressing those muscles that you work for arm wrestling lifts. And I got a couple implements here. I just got like a handle, I got a gripper, just to show you guys kind of the difference in how you would train your hand and your wrist for arm wrestling as opposed to grip. And basically, a lot of times people talk about grip and arm wrestling and they say grippers don't help because when you close a gripper that the wrist kicks back, right? So when you close a gripper, your wrist doesn't cup in, it goes back. And the reason for this is when you cup in, you just lose all of your crushing strength because the forearm's already contracted and this is being stretched out. So their solution a lot of times is to take a light gripper and to do it from a cup position. I don't recommend that you guys do this. And part of this was kind of brought up because there was a photo of John Brzezinski closing a 1.5 with a cupped wrist, right? And he has gone on record saying that it hurts his wrist. He just did it for that video, for the photo. It's not a good thing to train. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Sometimes you see people who are really gifted at certain things, they do something, makes it look kind of easy, and you think, oh, I should do that because that guy is at that level. You got to be careful with that, right? Because sometimes they just have really good genetics. So we know that we have to kick back the wrist. It has to go into wrist extension in order to close it. It's not this much, but it's a good amount. And I guess the argument would be, does that carry over to the table? And the honest truth is, if we talk about carryover, you got to ask what is being carried over, right? So there's some technical carryover, and then there's some strength carryover. So technically, the strength that you would get from closing grippers, regardless of the fact that you do this way, regardless of that, it will carry over to the arm wrestling table. And the reason for that is because it will make your hand and wrist and your forearm stronger. So, that's pretty basic stuff. But there's another component to it, whether or not you should train in that position at all. And that's why a lot of people shy away from gripper training, even though they like it or they may want to do it, but they hear that it's not useful or that there's not any carryover, right? And carryover is kind of a weird term that people use, but generally that's what they mean, generally. But if we take, for example, this is a 70 millimeter Mazurenko handle. If we take this, now you can see from the shape, this is a much better handle if you want to target how it will feel if somebody attacks your fingers in an arm wrestling table, right? And you basically, what you do is you just grip around and you attach it to a pulley, or you could do it off the ground, but that's kind of brutal. But if you put it on the pulley, it will start pulling you in this direction. It will try to open the fingers up. See? And as a result, it will open up your wrist flexion as well. So you kind of want the ability to sink in your fingers and your cup at the same time, like this. You kind of want to make a cage. You don't want to squeeze down. You want to get around and just make sure that they don't roll out through those fingertips. That being said, doesn't mean that if you don't train with this handle and you train with grippers instead, and you get to a super high level with grippers, that it won't carry over to an arm wrestling table. That's not true. It will. The strength will carry over. Now, you need some coordination. You need some time for the coordination to set and kick in. Sometimes you're so used to getting your wrist extended like this, you walk up to a table, you grip somebody, you naturally just kind of want to squeeze down. But if you practice just the movement of, getting your wrist in or kind of caging in, then the strength that you got from those grippers, all that gripper training you did, the strength will still be there. You will just apply it differently. So ultimately, the question of whether or not do grippers help for arm wrestling, it depends on how you want it to help. If you want it to help from a technical standpoint, not really, because it's a completely different position and it's a different bone alignment and everything like that. So you want to make sure, if you're an arm wrestler, if you're not a grip guy, if you're an arm wrestler and you want to be really good at arm wrestling, I would suggest that you train specifically, at least with something like this once a week. You can train with the grippers, but at least once a week train with something like this, or a fat handle, or anything that will mimic grabbing onto someone else's hand and having them try to open you up in terms of wrist flexion, okay? And that's just one part of arm wrestling training. It's not the whole thing. But it coincides a lot with the grip training because it's using the same muscles. Now, if we go by the training, there's a couple ways to approach it. I can tell you my approach, and then I can suggest a couple things, a couple variations, if you like, for you guys who are trying to do both. Mondays is anything thick bar related, right? Sometimes this changes. I might do fat grip deadlifts, either with like a cup or, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. There you go. Sometimes you get a phone call randomly during a video or notification. I should have put it on Do Not Disturb. But basically, sometimes I'll do like either with like a cup, thumbless, or a thumb over, and I'll make sure that the portion of my forearm that's getting taxed the most is this flexor right here, and that part has to get stressed through that volume, which we talked about in the last video. That will guarantee some growth. Now, after that, I might go into some wrist curls, and I either do wrist curls with a couple different things. I either do wrist curls with this, simply like this. I don't go all the way back. If you guys are doing wrist curls, it's not a good idea to bust your wrist all the way back. So if you just kind of keep it straight and then just cup as much as you can like this, that's the best way to do it in my opinion. If you get a rolling grip thing or a rolling thunder or anything like that, although rolling thunders don't have that smoothness to that, use some kind of a smooth handle. Rolling thunder is more for a grip lift I would say, than it is for a wrist curl. But yeah, I do that, and then I'll just do a containment exercise. I'll just kind of, I'll hover over, get tight, get the lat tight like this, and I'll just go straight back. There are some people that have said that you can go sideways while dragging it back. That puts a little less emphasis on the fingers, and just in general will make it seem more translatable to the table. But I prefer to just hit that target, just hit that muscle that I'm trying to target. And once I'm done with that, I have the rest of the stuff that I will usually train, which is, you know, biceps, pronation. You know, you gotta train your pronation. Rising is also important. Sometimes I'll do supination, ulnar deviation. Basically, I try to do as much as I can, because even if you're not an arm wrestler, it is still important, if you're a grip guy, that you train pronation and supination, and the movements that kind of, you don't want to have only a dominant flexor, because it can create some imbalances, can lead to injuries once in a while. So try to keep things as balanced as possible in that one arm. Now, Tuesdays we got the bench and the shoulder side. Anyways, picking up previously, the Tuesdays is mostly bench and shoulders, so a lot of like chest and shoulder stuff, triceps, that stuff helps. And Wednesdays and Thursdays are usually breaks, or if I want, I can go and play basketball and stuff like that. I'm just not lifting on either of those days. And Friday is the gripper day, so I do grippers and then pinch, and then I do back pressure work, so a lot of brachioradialis and a lot of brachialis work, hammer curl stuff, and pronation, rise, and what's it called? Saturday we go back to the Tuesday, you know, and Sunday's a rest. So you see that I got grippers on Fridays, and then I got this kind of stuff on Mondays. And the reason that I don't train both of them on the same day is because they're most of the time using the same muscles. Now, there are some lifts that kind of use slightly different, but for the most part, this is going to incorporate the same muscles, and when you do one, the other will get tired. So if you haven't noticed, for you grip guys out there, if you have done grippers before and then tried, like, if you've done grippers before and then you tried rolling thunder, you'll notice that there's some, you just feel fatigued, and that's if you worked on the gripper. Of course, if you just attempted a gripper, you didn't really burn out that muscle, it's not that fatiguing. But if you're gonna fatigue the muscle and you're gonna hit it again, well, don't expect to be able to lift as much weight. So on Fridays, I hit that forearm flexors, and you know, there's some other muscles that are underneath that you can't really see, but in general, they're similar muscles, and they kind of cross over. But on Fridays, I'm hitting grippers as a way to get that stronger, and then I don't do fat bar. After that, I do pinch, and pinch kind of trains a different motion. Like if you see your thumb, when you move your thumb, you can see, like if I move my bottom two fingers, you have this portion that's used more for grippers, and if you use your thumb and your other fingers, you can see it's more working on the radial side. So because of that, they're not fatiguing each other, so they can actually complement each other pretty well. And then on Mondays, after I've had a good 2-3 days rest, I can hit that muscle group again, just in a different manner. And going back to what I said earlier, if you are an arm wrestler and you want to train grip, do grippers once a week and do the other stuff once a week, but space them out so that there's at least a couple of days rest, at least 48 hours rest between your last gripper session and your next arm wrestling cupping workout, stuff like that. And if you really want to do it, you can do all your arm wrestling workouts after grippers. So you can do them on the same day, which will make it so that you're recovered for the next session. If you do grippers on one day and then you do pronation on another, and then you do riser and then that, if you kind of separate them, you could, but it will kind of hinder your ability a little bit because you'll have to take that extra day to train with the grippers. So always keep that in mind. If you're trying to do both at the same time, that's what I suggest, that you take at least one day a week for grippers and then another day with something that will have a different type of feel to it and won't, completely change the feel. A lot of times you change the feel and you get on the table and you grip up with somebody, you might not have that, you might not feel that carryover. I want you guys to train specifically for what you're trying to compete at. If you're a grip guy that's trying to do arm wrestling stuff, the arm wrestling stuff that you should be doing is a lot of supination and pronation and rising, radial deviation, ulnar deviation. A lot of that stuff can actually help you in grip, even though we don't test a lot of those strengths. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're training it and you have a well-rounded forearm, it will help. Also, bicep strength, having strong biceps and having a strong hammer pressure also can help. And yeah, it's kind of basic for those of you who really wanted to know how to balance out grip and arm wrestling training. You just gotta do the movements that don't tax each other on the same day, and you gotta space it out so there's at least 2 or 3 days of rest between this session and the next, and that way you will progress without injuries and without constantly being fatigued. You want to have some good feelings about it. There are some other things that you could get. I know this, I think this is from like a Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever. It's like a ultra heavy finger trainer. It's like it trains each individual fingers. Like this. I don't know if you can see the one moving individually, but yeah, I sometimes use this just as like a recovery tool, and you can hit each individual finger. You can hit the bottom 2 fingers to target more than the other, the top 2 fingers. Sometimes I usually just put my thumb right on top of these 2 at the same time, and I just kind of work the thumb muscle here. And yeah, this is just a recovery tool. But if you guys have some money to spend and you really want to buy an implement that will hit your fingers really well, especially for an arm wrestler, go back to this handle. It is really good. And some people get a 60 millimeter one or a 50 millimeter. They come in 3 different sizes, 50, 60, 70 millimeters. For those of you who are unaware of the millimeters, that's about 2 inches, 2.375, and then 2.75, I believe. I believe those are the approximates. But yeah, if you train this, you'll train your wrist and your fingers hit both at once. And make sure you get some chalk for this though, because they are a little bit slippery. If you're wondering what weights are good for it, you know, I don't know for the other ones, but I know for the 70 millimeter, anything above 40 kilos, in my opinion, is pretty good. Like, I would say a lot of pros probably could not do over 40 kilos, you know, comfortably. So if you're in that ballpark, that's good for you. Anything elite would be probably like 50, 55 and up. And it's only a 10-15 kilo difference only. But remember, it's your fingers, it's your wrist, those are not the biggest muscles. That stuff will pile up quick. When you try 5 kilos more, it will, you know, it will feel like a crazy difference. So just keep that in mind, you know, when you think it's only 10 kilos, it's not. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful for any of you guys who are arm wrestlers and want to train your grip. Just make sure, guys, that you're training it separately. Like, okay, don't try to do grippers and this on the same day, because you'll just find yourself being fatigued for one or the other, depending on which one you do first. It doesn't matter. You'll be fatigued for the other one because you're doing that similar muscle. So that's the takeaway from this video. Make sure that you are training specifically for arm wrestling. If you want to get strong using grippers, you can. You can, and anyone who said that you can't is lying. It's not the strength that is the lack. It's just the movement and how you have to use it. But that stuff can take care of itself within a couple of weeks. You know, you tweak this here and there. You start using this only for a couple of weeks before your match, you know, 4 or 5 weeks before your match, and you'll go to the match and you'll probably feel the same thing. So you're not gonna start the match like this. Don't worry. And yeah, just make sure you do all that stuff I just mentioned, and you'll find that your hand and wrist will get super strong like this. So just make sure you take this advice, or else you'll forever be weak, and you don't want that. All right, make sure to leave a like, comment below more questions for the future videos. I'll try to keep these going at least every 2-3 weeks. I'm trying to get the best questions I can. I'm trying to think a little bit how to answer these. I don't write stuff down, so I gotta make sure I think about it before I make a video like this, so I don't miss things. But if I do miss things, I probably will. I probably have. Just comment down below. I'll answer it separately. And yeah, stay strong, guys. Peace.